Have you ever really thought about cooking? I mean, really thought about it. Today, we're going to do just that. We're taking a trip through time to see how cooking went from a complete accident to the incredible global art form that it is today. Let's get into it. So, what's the connection? How do you get from a simple campfire to, a meal that costs a fortune and has a 3-month waiting list? Well, the thread that connects them is thousands of years of trial and error, of culture, and of pure, delicious discovery. The story of our food really is the story of us. All right, to start, we have to go way, way back, before history was even a thing. See, the first cook wasn't some genius inventor. It was probably just a regular, primitive human who, by total chance, stumbled onto something that would change everything. Just picture it for a second. A piece of raw meat accidentally falls into the fire. And instead of being ruined, it comes out different. Better, actually. Suddenly it's got flavor, it's tender, you don't have to chew it for an hour. That single moment, that was the spark. Food went from being just fuel for survival to something you could actually enjoy. Okay, let's jump forward a lot. If you want to understand the fancy, complex food world we have today, you pretty much have to start in one place, the French kitchen. It's really the cornerstone of what we think of as modern Western dining. And right at the very heart of that French tradition is this idea of haute cuisine, which literally means high cooking. This is the whole philosophy that says cooking isn't just a chore, it's an art form. It's all about getting the best ingredients you can find and then preparing and presenting them with incredible care. And you can really trace this lineage of culinary giants. It starts way back in the 14th century with Guillaume de Tyrol. He got the ball rolling. But then, in the 1800s, this guy Marie-Antoine Carême comes along and basically writes the rule book. He organizes all the techniques, which is pretty much the reason culinary schools even exist. And then, at the turn of the 20th century, the legend himself, Georges-Auguste Escoffier, steps onto the scene, ready to shake things up. Escoffier was a total game changer. He looked at the crazy, chaotic banquets of his day. We're talking like 20 dishes in a single course, and he called it general confusion. He streamlined everything, focusing on flavors that actually made sense together. But maybe his biggest contribution was reorganizing the kitchen itself into what's called the brigade system. It's the reason a busy restaurant kitchen looks like a well-oiled machine instead of total chaos. But of course, France is only one part of this big, delicious story. While all of that was happening in Europe, an equally deep and complex food history was unfolding in the East. So next stop, India. Now, the first thing you have to get your head around is that there's really no such thing as Indian food. As you can see from this map, the subcontinent is huge and incredibly diverse. We're talking about a massive collection of different cultures and climates, and every single one has its own unique way of cooking. And for something like 5,000 years, India has been a crossroads of the world. Every group that came through, traders, invaders, you name it, they all left something behind in the kitchen. The Mughals brought those rich, creamy dishes like biryani, and get this, things we think of as essential to Indian cooking, like tomatoes and chilies, those were brought by the Portuguese from the Americas. It just shows you how history literally ends up on your dinner plate. This story is a global one, so let's zoom out for a quick tour of two more culinary heavyweights, whose food you can find in just about any city on the planet, Italy and China. Italian food, just like Indian food, is super regional, but you can kind of think of it as a tale of two halves. Up in the wealthy north, with all those green pastures for cattle, you get richer dishes with butter and cream and rice for risotto. But head down to the sun-baked south, and it's a completely different world, one dominated by olive oil, tomatoes, and the kind of dry pasta we're all familiar with. And then you have China, a country so massive, its food is often broken down into these great schools of cooking. Just look at the difference here. In the north, they grow wheat, so you get dishes like Peking duck with those salty, crisp flavors. But if you go west to Sichuan, bam, you're hit with that famously hot, spicy, numbing flavor. It's incredible how much the landscape shapes what people eat. So we have all these amazing ancient traditions that built up over centuries. But what happens when a new generation of chefs decides it's time to just break all the rules? Well, that takes us to the 1970s and a movement that completely changed the game, Nouvelle Cuisine. This was a full-on rebellion against the old classical French style. A bunch of young chefs just got tired of this super heavy, complicated food. So they tossed out those thick, floury sauces and replaced them with lighter ones.
They cooked things for less time to keep them fresh and crisp. And here's a big one. They started arranging the food on the plate themselves, turning every dish into a work of art. Led by guys like the legendary Paul Bocuse, this new cooking had a few key rules. It was all about freshness, simplicity, and letting the amazing ingredients speak for themselves. The goal was to taste the actual food, not hide it under a heavy sauce. It was creative, it was light, and it treated the dinner plate like an artist's canvas.
This quote really says it all, doesn't it? The art of cooking is never finished. It's always evolving. There's always a new ingredient to discover, a new technique to try, or a new idea that changes everything. It's a story that's still being written, every single day. Which brings us to one last question to chew on. We've gone from a piece of meat dropped in a fire to these incredible global traditions and mind-bending revolutions. After all that, what's next? What's the next big idea that's going to completely change the way we eat?